Welcome to the Legacy Sips and Tips podcast with your host, Lindsay Wheeler. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about what my life revolves around, which is death. Because when you think of death, you think of me. Yeah. Today, we're going to talk about dying, death, how that's going to happen, what it looks like, and the fact that it's going to happen to all of us. Spoiler alert. I know it's hard to imagine that we're going to die, but we are. Your loved ones are going to die, your animals are going to die, plants are going to die. Literally everything is going to die because it is the natural process of life. It is the yin to the yang of life. It is dark and light. It's what we're going to deal with eventually. That and death and taxes. You're always going to have to pay taxes because God, the government. But yes, so we're all going to die, and how do we handle that? How do we deal with it? My experiences with it, obviously that is my job. That is what I deal with. And don't get me wrong, it gets brutal and it's hard and it's difficult and it's emotional, and I cry a lot in my job, like a lot. I cry in my job a lot. But it's also a natural thing. It's a cool thing. It is, life. It is life. Dying is life. So that's kind of how that process works, if you will. If you're alive, you're going to die. Anything that's alive right now is going to die. Obviously, it's difficult. It sucks. Our loved ones passing away, the scary part of us thinking about dying and what are we done with our lives and not done with our lives, and leaving that legacy or not leaving that legacy. Having our friends die, having our parents die, having our loved ones die, having our animals die, having even plants die. It's sad when my plants die, and it's a natural thing. So we're going to talk about that today. Super uplifting, super exciting stuff. Let's dive in a little bit about what happens when you die. There are a lot of things that happen. Obviously, your body is going to go away, your spirit goes away, your mind, what have you. There's the financial aspect of your life dying. There's the familial aspect of your life dying. There's the financial aspect of your life dying, because we all are our own little businesses in a weird way. And it is a lot. And how we kind of prep for that is through our estate plan. We make those decisions while we're alive, so others don't have to guess after we're gone. And I know we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to go, oh my God, I'm going to die. My loved ones are going to die. My pets are going to die. All this is going to happen. But I don't know about you, but when I get on an airplane and they give me the safety briefing, I'm sure shit happy that I have that safety briefing and I know what's going to happen in the event of that emergency. Or if you're on the Alaska Airlines and the door blows out, what do? Oh, the oxygen mask comes out. We're going to make sure that that's taken care of. Take care of yourself before we take care of others. It's that insurance policy that when you pass away, which is going to happen, you've already taken care of that for your loved ones. So they're not guessing. We're not guessing after the fact, being like, fuck, I don't know. I hope this guy wanted this. I hope you're not that shitbag kid that they didn't want anything to go to, but you step up and you're like son of the hour. And we're hoping that everything is going to go to you accordingly, and not just because it has to through the legal process called intestate succession. And that's when you don't have anything in place. We go off of that basically hierarchy of lineal descent, essentially is what that is. So the financial aspect of your life has to be wrapped up. Your credit cards, your bank accounts, your house, your cars, your boats, all of that stuff has to be taken care of, and it's a harsh reality of what happens when you pass away to all your stuff that you've accumulated during your life. You have your body remains, what happens to your actual body in that process. And then you have the impact of your loved ones and what happens when you pass away and what's going on with them as well. So it can be overwhelming, it can be difficult, and I'll hopefully break it down a little bit for you here in this episode on how to handle dying and death and what that actually means. So say you were to pass away and you did not have anything in place. You have children, you have a spouse, you have a home, you have maybe a rental property, you have your cars, your investments, your banks, all of the normal things that we kind of accumulate during our lives, unless we're like super rich and we have boats, yachts, chalets, and ponies, but that's a whole different episode. But for the rest of us who have like the normal everyday things, what happens when you pass away? Well, a lot of things. If you have nothing in place, you have no paperwork, you have nothing that has told anybody of authority or agencies what to do with your stuff, we now have to do the probate process. And that is the court's process to protect dead people's things. That is exactly what probate is. It is a court to handle dead people's things. And the reason for that is that when you pass away, we don't want some jackass off the street or some tweaker to be like, oh, Bob Smith, I'm supposed to get that bank account. No, man, you're not, because you're a crackhead. What the probate process is that societal's checks and balances to make sure that you are who you are when you pass away, the people who are supposed to get your stuff or who is supposed to get your stuff, and what stuff do you have? It's that checks and balances. And that's why when somebody passes away, everything gets locked down. Credit cards get turned off, bank accounts are frozen, mortgages are frozen, houses are frozen, everything is frozen, because we want to make sure that somebody just doesn't come in and steal dead people's things, because let's be real, people suck. And there are a lot of criminals out there and a lot of unsavory people who will come in there and steal dead people's things. It's the reality of the world. People just suck. So that's the societal checks and balances called that probate process. What that looks like is frankly a fucking nightmare. Okay. Society, again, is going to lock all those things down. So if you have somebody that passes away and you're dealing with their quote unquote estate, you do not have authority to deal with anything until that court gives you that authorization. How that works is that somebody passes away, you're, say, the most responsible person to handle this person's affairs, your parents or your sibling or whoever it is. You would then file what we call a probate petition with the court in that jurisdiction to let the court know that this person passed away. You are the person most responsible to handle these assets or this life of this person who's passed away. And the court is now doing that checks and balances and that due diligence to make sure that you are a good, upstanding person and is not going to go steal this dead person's stuff. Really what it is in a nutshell. It is a lengthy process. So keep in mind that the courts are busy. They probably won't get to you for at least a month, maybe usually 3 months before you can even get in front of a judge, before you can even get that authority to handle this dead person's things. During that time, though, bills still have to be paid. So you are still having to cover this dead person's things, mortgages, car payments, expenses. It can be a lot. I don't know about you, but I can't cover 2 mortgages. So that is part of that process, that creditors don't give 2 shits that you died. They still want their money. So your heirs are usually having to upfront that cost from their own pocket, which can be quite substantial. From there, after that 3 months, you finally get that authority to handle everything. Now you will have access to those bank accounts, those investments, whatever it is that that person had to take care of these bills, and you will be reimbursed on the back end, but that's usually not until at least a year later. So think of that. A year later, you'll finally maybe get reimbursed for the expenses that you put out in the very beginning. That can be substantial. Like I said, I had one client who was like, hey, when am I going to get appointed? I'm up to $15,000 right now, keeping this estate going and keeping it solvent until I have that authority. It can be a lot. From there, then you have notifications for creditors. You have to put a notification in the paper. You have to let people know that, hey, if you have a debt, you have money owed from this dead person, that you have the ability to collect on the estate. What if you have to sell the property? That's a whole other ballpark. Getting that house up for sale, getting a realtor involved, getting the house sold. Oftentimes that is another court hearing. Sometimes there's an auction that even happens, that people come on and they can bid up this property. What a nightmare that is. That's a whole other hearing that you have to have that has to be filed. Typically there's about 35 filings with the court that happen. That's a lot. And that's why the attorneys that you hire think that they should get a percentage of your estate. That is something that bothers me. I don't like it. I don't like that attorneys can come in and take a percentage of an entire estate. I like to flat rate probates when I do them. I prefer attorneys who flat rate them, because think about this. If you have a house these days that has equity of $500,000 or more, even $1 million, and an attorney is coming in and taking a percentage of that, they're usually on average going to take $26,000 to $50,000 or more of an estate for doing, frankly, fuck all. They're just filing some paperwork at the court for you that, again, is usually statutorily set or code set, that everybody files. It's the same kind of paperwork. They're just going through the motions. They're doing that copy and paste and replace and doing that for you. And so they think that they're owed a percentage of that. $26,000 to $50,000 that could have went to your heirs, that could have went to your children, that could have went to your loved ones, could go to charity. Wherever you wanted it to go is now going to the hands of an attorney. I understand it's a necessary evil. I understand that you do need to have a probate attorney to navigate through the probate process if you're not comfortable doing it on your own. I understand that they should get paid for that, but should they get a percentage of the whole estate? I don't know. That's up to you to think about. So these are kind of the things that you have to think about. So then we're doing our notice to creditors. That's having to run on a publication, and then by the time we get finally to the end of it, we're looking at usually a year to 18 months as an average probate. 13 months is a very fast probate. That these things are tied up for that time. You're dealing with this estate for 13 months. Like, oh my God, how are you able to grieve? How are you able to move on? And that is the saddest thing I see. So instead of people having their loved one pass away and them being like, okay, I'm gonna take a breath, I'm gonna breathe, I'm gonna deal with this, when I have had a minute. Oftentimes I see people literally days afterwards or the day of digging through paperwork. Like, holy fuck, how awful is that? Like, it's awful to sit there and have to deal through paperwork when somebody's just passed away, when you should have the time to just grieve and mourn their loss and appreciate their life. You're digging through paperwork? Like, Jesus Christ, let's not do that to people. And so that is where estate planning comes in, is that you're taking care of all of these things ahead of time while you're here. So there's no question about what you wanted because you're doing it for us. How cool is that? What a gift that is for your loved ones, your heirs, your children, that you're handling this for them. This really isn't for you. This is a gift for your loved ones and your children, frankly. So it is a nice process. You're basically setting up everything ahead of time. You're taking care of everything. You're making sure everything is transferred or done for them. And then when you pass away, they're not scrambling, having to go to a lawyer's office who really doesn't give two shits that you passed away. Let's be real. They don't care. They're not compassionate. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. They don't care. They deal with this all the time. We're calloused. We deal with death a lot. We're just like, okay, cha-ching, new folder, and handling it that way. And I'm not saying that lawyers aren't compassionate, because there are a lot of them out there, but we deal with this a lot, and it's paperwork. And I always tell people it's just paperwork. So when people get overwhelmed, I'm like, honestly, it's really just paperwork. So you're going to an office, dealing with the lawyer after someone's passed away. They're just like, okay, give me your retainer, give me this. I'm going to take a percentage of the account. What do we got? Give me all this paperwork, give me this paperwork, give me this paperwork. When you have an estate plan, you've done all of that ahead of time. Your loved ones aren't having to go to an attorney's office. They're not having to deal with a lawyer or somebody who doesn't have any compassion or love for your life. You've done that for them. They're able to come in from day one and have access to those accounts, to the house, to the cars, or whatever it is. If your loved ones are, say, in a different state, they live across the country, they're able to come in from day one, come into your house. It's not being locked out. They can take care of your animals. They can take care of your life, your estate, pay your bills from your money, not from them. So that's the advantage of it. Also, keep in mind that probates are not private. I can literally go on right now and we control the probate department and look at people's lives because it is public record. I can see death certificates. I can see how people died. I can see in the probate petition who that person is, where their property is, who their children are, who their heirs are, what other assets they owned. It's kind of scary, frankly, that I can easily just troll that and look. And this is my profession, this is what I do. But think about the criminals out there and the unsavory people who are literally doing the same thing and going down to the courthouse and trolling public record. It happens, and it's scary. So the way to avoid that is through that estate planning, through that revocable living trust. That's all private. That does not have to go in through a court or through a probate process because you've done that ahead of time. You've taken care of that for your loved ones. And what a gift that is. So that's what happens to your stuff, frankly, when you die. A big thing too is that, again, let's be real, your shit's gonna go in a dumpster. And it is harsh and it is brutal to literally watch someone's life be thrown into a dumpster, especially if you've known them your whole life. They're related to you, you love them, you're friends. Watching that person's stuff be thrown into a dumpster it's brutal. It's brutal. I'm not gonna mix words with it. It is brutal, but it's the reality of life. And so you take what you can. Hopefully, if you're setting up your estate plan and in the forefront, sentimental things or important things for you, you set that aside. You make sure that people have where that's supposed to go, how that's taken care of for you, where somebody's going to come take care of it. Otherwise, the reality is that your shit's going to go in a dumpster, and that's awful to think about. But those are the realities of what happens to your stuff when you pass away. Yeah, let's not do that to our loved ones. Let's take care of that ahead of time, and we do that through that estate planning. So when you do your estate planning, I have people come to me and they're like, I have a will. That's old school. I have a will. I have a last will and testament. Cool. you have a nice roadmap for the court to follow through the probate process. So a lot of people have that misunderstanding that even if they have a will, that's going to avoid this for everybody. It does not. I'm going to reiterate that for you again. Even with a will, your heirs will still have to go through the probate process. A will is just the roadmap for the court to follow for the probate process. We like to have it. Absolutely, it should be the most minimal thing that you have because it gives us direction of who you are, where you want your stuff to go, what have you again, but it's just the roadmap for the court to follow through probate. So with a will, your heirs are still going through probate. The way to avoid that probate process is with that revocable living trust and estate plan. So my job is to make sure that people aren't having to go through this bullshit court process. That is what I do. I make sure that your estate plan is in place, your trust is in place, your revocable living trust is in place. So your loved ones aren't having to do this, you're doing it for them. Again, what a gift for them. Some people get wrapped up of like, oh, I don't want to think about dying, and oh my God, am I going to die? How do I get this in place? Spoiler alert, we're all going to die. So just get it in place. You know what I mean? So it's a nice thing to do, and to help people kind of divorce themselves from it is that this isn't for you. This is for your heirs. It's making it so easy for your loved ones, and they will thank you and thank you and thank you after you're gone. What often happens to me is I get frantic phone calls of, hey, this person's in the hospital, they're ready to pass, and we have nothing in place. Oh my God, now this is a reality. Now we're gonna have to go through probate. I don't wanna have to do that. Holy shit, can you come down to the hospital and take care of this? I come to the hospital quite frequently, honestly. People get diagnosed with things, people get sick, people get terminal, and they don't realize it. And sometimes people go to the hospital and they're not gonna come back out. So I will oftentimes come to the hospital. I'm like, okay, let's get your estate plan in place. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you understand. We get those documents in place. And a lot of times it's rough because I'm going through the estate plan and I'm talking about medical decisions. And I'm like, it's a Friday. You're not going to make it till Sunday. I don't even know if I should be even asking you this. Do we even need to have this? Like, that's how harsh it is. Oftentimes when I come to the hospital, everyone codes when I'm there, and I'm like, oh my God, am I a shepherd? Do you need to be shepherded out? Like, give me your coins and I'll pay the ferryman for you. It is a harsh reality. And if you work in medical or any of that kind of industry, you understand that this is how it works. People come in, people don't have anything in place. They don't have even if you're coming in for a surgery or something like that, or something, you're in a car accident, have your medical directives in place, for God's sakes. Like, let us know what you want to have done. If you're in a coma and you're not coming out of that, do you want to be kept going artificially? Because we can do that now with technology. We can keep you going as a vegetable forever. And that's probably not what a lot of people want to have done. Let me know. Let your loved ones know. Put that in a medical directive. Do you want to have pain relieving medication? Do you want, if you have a terminal condition, to be kept going? How important are these things for you? Do you want, somebody to advocate for you if you're not able to? That's where estate planning comes in. It's not just for dying, it's for all the aspects of your life. Because again, bad things happen. People get sick, people get hurt, people get in car accidents, people fall out of airplanes, people fall on the sidewalk, people get hit by cars. Like, bad shit happens. And so why not make sure that those scenarios are kind of taken care of for ourselves? And so I oftentimes are called to the hospital like, oh, this person's not going to make it. We need to get something in place. And a lot of times it's too late because we still need that person to transfer those assets or to give the authority outside of a power of attorney, because powers of attorney are great and they're wonderful, and they give the ability for somebody to advocate for you and take care of either financial decisions or medical decisions. But that power of attorney dies with you. So I come in on a Friday. Banks are usually closed Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You can get in there with the power of attorney, but if you were to pass away on a Sunday, your agent can't do anything on Monday morning for you because that power of attorney now has gone away. And now the trust kicks in. Maybe hopefully we got that house transferred, but for the most part, there's a little bit of pre-planning that needs to happen. We can't do this last minute. It's a harsh reality, but it is reality. Like, it's literally the only thing guaranteed in life is that you're going to die, as brutal as that sounds. So take care of that now. Like, we buy car insurance, we have house insurance for those bad situations that happen. Why wouldn't we do the basically insurance policy for when we die? Like, hello, that's pretty straightforward. So don't be that person in the hospital where I'm like, oh shit, like, can you hang on, bro? Can you hang on till Tuesday? Like, that's an awful conversation I have to have with people of like, can you make it till Tuesday? Can you not die till Tuesday? So at least we have Monday to get all these things taken care of. that's a crappy conversation to have with somebody, so we can avoid that by getting that estate plan in place. So let's talk about a pretty brutal, harsh story of mine of dealing with my next door neighbor, Miss Barbara. She was the most amazing human literally ever. She raised me. She raised a bunch of us neighborhood kids. Frankly, it's the only reason why I'm not completely feral. Let's be real. So yeah, she was my next door neighbor. She was not related to me. She didn't have any kind of familiar relationship at all. She was just an amazing human who helped raise feral neighborhood children. And with that, she did have a son who was frankly a shitbag. He was a drug addict, crackhead. She ended up having him move back in with her, like he weaseled his way in there. And at one point he tried to quote unquote kill himself, but in the process tried to kill her. He opened the garage door, started the car, and filled the house with carbon monoxide. Luckily she had an alarm that went off and she was able to call 911, and luckily she was okay. We of course got a restraining order against him. We got him evicted from the house. He just was awful. He's just an awful human being. And sometimes that happens. Like, you can be the best person in the world. You can raise your children as best as you can, and they just end up not being good. And that happens a lot. I have a lot of clients who are like, yeah, I don't talk to my kid at all. Like, they're awful, or they're drug addicts, or they're alcoholics, or they're just conniving shitbags. And so that person, though, is still your kid, and they're still entitled to your estate. And how we avoid that is through that estate plan. So for my experience was that I'm not related to Barbara, but I was able to advocate for her wishes, for what she wanted, because she knew that I would take care of that for her. I was able to get her medical decisions in place when she was able to make those decisions. I was able to get her house transferred. I was able to put everything into that trust and that estate plan for her wishes. If she did not have that, her shitbag, drug addict, piece of shit son would have been entitled to all of her stuff that she obviously didn't want to have happen. He's not a good person. So she was able to tell me what she wanted to have done with her stuff. I was able, for when she was started to kind of decline, to make those decisions for her. I was able to come in and step in her powers of attorney. I was able to take care of her finances for her when she was starting to get, a little weird. Like, she'd forget to pay the power bill, or she'd double pay the cable bill or whatever it was. I was able to come in and, with that power of attorney, take care of her financial aspects for her, making sure that her bills were on bill pay, making sure that nobody's taking money from her, that she's not getting scammed on the back end. I'm able to see her accounts. I'm able to advocate for her to make sure that her life and her hard work is being taken care of and respected. I was able to do that. When she started declining physically and mentally, I was able to make sure that she was safe. She kept, she was great until 91 and a half, essentially, 92. Great. Until she started falling, and I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And she realized, she's like, this isn't good. And we were able to put her into a nice place where that she was safe, she was taken care of, she wasn't by herself anymore, and make sure that she was advocated for and taken care of and safe. And and then honestly, like, she was great until 3 months before she passed away. Like, hopefully we all get that way, or we die in our sleep, like, knock on wood. Like, that would be the great way of passing. And being able to advocate for her. Does she want, pain relieving medication? Does she want to be comfortable? What is helping her transition with dignity and honor? I'm able to do that for her because she's told me what her wishes are ahead of time, and I'm able to do that for her. And, like, again, what a gift, what an honor to be able to do that, to help somebody transition like that. As difficult as it is, don't get me wrong, it's brutal, it's awful, it's emotional, it's harsh, but I have a roadmap now for what she wanted. She is giving me those instructions. She is giving me that roadmap. I don't have to guess. I was able to do exactly what she wanted and put things where she wanted and take care of things how she wanted, because she has given that to me ahead of time. I didn't have to go through probate. I didn't have to battle her kid. I didn't have to battle her family, who were conniving shitbags, who were asking about the death certificate before she even passed away for insurance policies. Like, these are these people, and there's a lot of people like that out there. With having this in place, I'm able to be like, go fuck yourselves. You're not dealing in with anything, because we have everything handled how she wants to, not because you feel like you have the right to, because you're related for some reason. So that was kind of the nice thing that I was able to do for her, and make sure that everything was taken care of. There was no worry that she's not dealing with anything. There's no franticness. There's no me digging through paperwork. Everything is taken care of ahead of time. How awesome is that for somebody? And that's why it's important to have these things in place. I wasn't related to her. I technically had no right to advocate for her or do anything because I'm not related if I didn't have that paperwork. But because she gave me that authority through that paperwork, I'm able to make sure that things were taken care of for her how she wanted and not leaving it to the state or these horrible people. So that's the kind of benefit of that. So if you're in that position, maybe you're not married, you don't have children, you have your friends who need to advocate for you. Maybe your family has passed away or you're estranged from your family. I know a lot of our people in the LGBTQ plus community don't really have familiar relations or they're not married with their partners. This gives them the ability to be able to advocate for you or for those loved ones as well through that paperwork, even though you're not related and not part of that familial hierarchy, if you will. So it's super important to have in place, especially if you're in those kind of communities, making sure that those people are taken care of accordingly. So super important. On a happier note, let's talk about the wine I'm drinking today. Today, we have a Châteauneuf-du-Pape from the Rhone Valley in France. I am very partial to the French wines. I do like them very much. This is a nice bottle here. It's closed, but I have the open one over there. I just wanted to show you guys this one. This is a great wine. Again, I like French wines. I think they're solid from this region, the Rhone Valley. They're really nice. We got nice plums coming out of there. Currant. It's nice wine. It's also got some good coloring there, like ruby garnet color there, red. Châteauneuf-du-Papes usually have a higher alcohol content. This one is sitting at 15, in fact. So it gets you a little tipsy. So we have tips and sips. And it is a wonderful, well-balanced red wine from the Rhone Valley in France. So talking about death is gnarly. And unless you're doing this every day like I am, you're talking about death. Literally my tagline is, when you think of death, think of me. You're dealing with dying people or helping people transition with honor and dignity. It's a difficult conversation. You don't want to be like, hey bro, you gonna die? When are you gonna die tomorrow? You gonna die? Let's talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about dying. We want to talk about living and doing fun things. But as difficult it is to discuss this, it is a necessity. It's like talking about, taxes and car insurance. Yeah, it's boring as shit, but we should all be talking about it. Also, how much money are you making? We should all have that discussion too, because fuck these corporations. They should be topics that are not taboo and not talked about. It's difficult. A lot of times, during the holiday time, or just even you're out with your friends at a bar, you're having some wine and be like, hey, I heard this weird chick talking about estate planning and dying. Do you have an estate plan in place? Do you even know what that is? Talking to your friends, talking to your parents, especially your parents, like God, because hopefully, they're going to die before you. That's the succession that we'd like to have, as brutal and harsh as it is. Of course, we don't want to lose our parents, but it's worse to bury a child. That's not the natural succession or line. But having that discussion of hey, what do you want? Hey, I want to honor your wishes. Do you have anything in place? Make it kind of business-like in a weird way and not an emotional way of oh my God, we're all going to die and what's going to happen to you. But, you could also talk about funny stories of oh my God, I read this weird article about somebody being composted. Apparently that's a new thing. In Nevada, we're allowed to compost people now. Or if you want to be a pod tree person, I think that's one way now. Or I had a client who wants to be part of the forensic body lab, where they do all the cool, how long have you been dead? Oh, there's this maggot level on you or whatever. They use it for criminal stuff. Super cool. You can kind of talk about more fun things like that of hey, oh my God, did you see the Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix? That was fucking rough. Holy shit. I wonder if they had their estate plan in place. Weird things like that you can kind of broach the subject, because it is an unpleasant topic to talk about. Hey, are your friends dying? I, of course, deal with it every day. So I'm asking my friends constantly, hey, you got your estate plan in place? Hey, you got your estate plan in place? Hey, nice wine, good beer. You got your estate plan in place? That's kind of my jam. And I don't care if you go through me. I don't care if you go through an attorney. I don't care if you do it yourself. Please, for the love of God, have it in place. I'm happy that anybody has it in place. I have people who are like, oh, I'm sorry they didn't go with you. I'm like, I don't care. I just want it to have in place because I don't want people to go through probate because it sucks. So it is a difficult conversation. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's an important thing. So you can always broach it with hey, I read this article, or hey, I heard this podcast, or hey, my friend went through this and oh my God, what a nightmare. Do you have anything in place? And and having the education and having resources like me on this podcast or my YouTube channel or whatever it is, or socials, or I mean the other attorneys who do estate planning. We're here to educate you and get you set up so hopefully that you don't have to deal with the nightmare of probate. And there's tons of articles out there. There's all sorts of things that you can help be like, hey, I read this thing, or I talked to this person, or oh my God, my friend just went through this horrible thing. And usually it doesn't happen until it happens to you. Until something horrible happens or you're, associated with it, you don't think about these things. And that sucks until it's usually too late, or somebody's having to go through this horrible process. I have a lot of times clients are like, oh God, I wish I had you, 11 months ago. I just went through this horrible probate. Or I have clients are like, oh, I finally decided to get this done because I'm having to do a probate for somebody and it's awful and I don't want my kids to go through that. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's a necessary conversation to have. And holiday times are a really good time to have that when everyone's gathered together. And, maybe make it as a joke, maybe try to be as light as possible, or maybe be serious about it and be like, we got to discuss this. We got to make sure everything is in place. What do you have? I had this conversation with my dad the last time I saw him when I was over in France. He came over, and it's not something I really want to talk about. Like, I don't want to talk about my dad dying, but I also want to make sure that shit's together, especially because he lives in a foreign country. So important conversations to have. And once it's done, then it's done. Then you're like, cool, we can all go skydiving and swim with sharks and do all these fun things because everything is now taken care of and we don't have to worry about it. And everything's transparent, everything's taken care of. Even if you don't want things to be transparent or taken care of, you can, if you're private, you can have, like we have a legacy vault where you put all of your information in there and your estate plan and everything in there. And you can put, when you pass away, a note that says, hey, if I'm not here, there's an envelope in my sock drawer that has all of my information and all my login and all my information for you to have in one place to make it as easy as possible for these people. Please don't make us hunt through paperwork. Please don't make us go through taxes and see what's going on there. Please don't make us go through your mail, because it sucks, and I have done that. And it's brutal. It's way more brutal than having a difficult conversation at the dinner table or at Thanksgiving or at Christmas or at birthdays or barbecues or 4th of July. Way more easy. We try to make it as easy and as fun, frankly, as possible. If fun dying, we try to navigate that for you, but way more easier than after the fact when they're cursing your name going, these motherfucker didn't put anything in place for me. This sucks. Not only am I grieving the loss of them, now I'm hunting for paperwork and digging through file folders and mail looking for stuff. That's awful. Yeah, let's not do that to people. So let's now talk about coping with death and my experiences with coping with death, or not coping with death, if you will. Of course, again, it's a natural thing. I've had people die in my life who are very close to me, Barbara being one of them. Like, she was more like a mother to me, and it was fucking rough. Let's be real. Like, it was rough, and I had everything in place and made it as easy as possible for her transition and her passing, and it was still rough. Like, it's honest. It's awful. Like, it is awful. The harshest thing for me was looking at her life being thrown into a dumpster because it was not valuable. It wasn't worth anything. It had cat issues with it, you know what I mean, or animal, whatever. Like, things are not worth anything, but it was worth something to her. At the end of the day, your life is going to get put into a dumpster, and it just is the harsh reality, and it sucks. And it sucks having to be that person who has to navigate that for somebody else. It's fucking brutal. It's honestly super rough. I've had friends who have passed away, you know, either from suicide, which is also super rough because usually those people pre-plan, but they don't pre-plan enough to have their estate plan in place, which I'm like, okay, I understand that you're gonna kill yourself, and that's a super touchy trigger warning topic we're gonna talk about here. Maybe we should put that in the show notes, trigger warning. You know, dealing with that, like, you know, a lot of those people do pre-plan, but they don't pre-plan far enough ahead out of their own issues to get an estate plan in place. Some people do, which is cool, thank you, you know, for that, but oftentimes they don't. Maybe they'll leave a note of like why they're doing this or whatever it is, kind of like the movies, but oftentimes they're so in front of their own issues and grief and depression or whatever it is that they don't pre-plan ahead enough. And that's rough. So not only have you had somebody kill themselves, which is brutal in itself, like that is horrific in itself, And then the aftermath of that, of dealing with all of that person's life. Like, holy shit, like it's one thing to have somebody die because they are old and they've passed naturally, and that's a natural progression and that's wonderful. But to have people die in car accidents, drunk drivers, suicide, whatever it is, like that is traumatic enough, let alone having to have to deal with the aftermath of people's paperwork, essentially. It's people's lives on paper. So that's super difficult. I mean, I deal with this all the time. Like I see clients who I've dealt with who now their spouse, say, is diagnosed with some terminal condition. And I always ask them, how long have you been married for? And they'll be like 47 years, 50 years, 52 years. And to watch the love of your life and your spouse for that long to degrade that way is awful. It's awful. But luckily they have something in place. So then when they do transition, they pass, that remaining spouse isn't now left alone and then having to navigate these things, or left alone and then now having to do their own estate plan after being alone. It's something that you need to take care of, especially if you're married. If you have children, oh my God, for the love of God, please have an estate plan in place. If you have underage children, you absolutely should automatically have an estate plan and life insurance for your underage children. We'll get into that in an episode about life insurance, but it is so important for you to have these things set in place if you have underage children. I have horribly a client who is doing their estate plan with me, and what triggered them to finally get it done was that her sister was walking with her 18-month-old and her 3-year-old to go get hot chocolate during the holidays, and a drunk driver came and hit them, and mother obviously passed away. Children were injured, but okay. Because the children were from different relationships, the children got split up. One went to the biological father, the other one went to a family member. So now not only did these children lose their parent, they've also now lost their siblings because nothing was in place. No guardianship nominations were there of where the mother really wanted these two girls to go. I can't even imagine. And luckily, hopefully, these girls are young and won't remember or understand. And hopefully they live good, fulfilled, wonderful lives. But my God, if you don't have that in place, what if they went into foster care? What if they went into the system? What if there was no relatives to take care of them? And if you don't have anything in place, that is an awful reality. Say this woman was married and she had these two kids. The spouse of these children would have to become a guardian of her own children, of their own children through the courts. And anything that she had in place that would have went to these children would get put into a block trust account. And at 18, those kids are going to get all of that. So think about that. You have a nice life insurance, you have investments or whatever that are going to go to these children as inheritance. At 18, they're going to get all of that. So they could get potentially $500,000, $1 million, $2 million at 18. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a Lamborghini. That way to avoid that is through that estate plan, that you can make those plans, you can put up those parameters, that you didn't want your kid to have anything until 18 for only school, at 25 for home, to buy a home or for furthering education or to have business, at 30, hopefully maybe we're responsible enough. My one friend's like, fuck them kids, they don't get anything till 55 without a financial literacy class. Those are the things that you're able to control from beyond the grave to still be able to parent and love your children when you're not here. And again, we don't want to think that anything's going to happen to us, that our kids are going to live fulfilled lives and we're going to die on our deathbed at 107. But the reality is that life sucks. And so how do we mitigate that suckage? Is we do our estate plan in place. And so these are just some of the scenarios that I deal with. I cry a lot in my job. Let's be real. I'm not so callous that I can't handle these things. It sucks. I try to help these people and try to help them understand that it is an honorable thing to help people transition. To be put in that position is honorable, but it's brutal and it's difficult and it's emotional. And a lot of times I do leave and I go to my car and I cry. I had clients who were like, okay, my husband of 47 years is ready to pass. Oh, well, when he passes, I don't know how to cope and I'm not going to cope. And so I'm going to then make sure that I'm not available anymore. And I'm like, oh my God. These are the situations that I deal with that are reality. And so making sure that people are able to have things taken care of as easy as it can be for people to handle these situations and these scenarios. So there's a lot of gnarliness that happens out there, but whether I cope, I drink a lot of wine, obviously, clearly. I'm really good at compartmentalizing, real good at compartmentalizing. But yeah, it's brutal. And there's a reason why lawyers and certain doctors have the highest suicide rate, the highest substance use rate, highest depression rate, all of these things. We have these highest rates because this is a brutal thing that we deal with day in and day out, and that's our job. So because we deal with these brutalities in life, we try to make it as easy as possible for you guys when that time happens, and that you're not having to deal with the difficult decisions and makings and what have you, and you're able to sit, be calm, be good, be able to grieve, take that time, because we have made sure that all of these things are in place for that time. Yeah. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, let me know. Definitely, I'll have a lot of these resources in the show notes so you guys can see what some of the stuff looks like, resources out there, grieving counselors as well, that those are super important to have because this is a difficult topic, a lot of triggering issues happening in this episode as well. So subscribe, follow, whatever the cool kids are doing on the TikToks, if you will. Let me know what you guys want to hear about. I'm available for all the topics. We can talk about more fun things, uplifting things, wine, alcohol, travel, snowboard, fun things in life, not just dying. Or if you have questions, let me know. I'm on all the socials. And of course, when you think of death, think of me. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you found value, please subscribe, and share. And be sure to follow me on all the socials at Sips and Tips with Lindsay. And of course, you can always go to my website, sipsandtipswithlindsay.com, to find more information about estate planning, business, snowboard, travel, and of course, wine.